Morning, kids. This week we're talking about racism in policing, and to give you some more information on that, I went to the Chris Kaba protest outside Scotland Yard on Saturday, starting by speaking to ex-Merseyside police officer Chantel Lunt.
I used to be a police officer for Merseyside Police. I'm the founder and chair of Merseyside BLM Alliance and the founder and chair of Operation Withdraw Consent. Chris Kaba was being chased by the police. He was chased into an alleyway and blocked in by the police, and from what we know so far, the police shot him through an officer, shot him through the windscreen of his car and shot him in the head. From what we know so far, this is all based on intel that suggested that there were firearms in the car. There was no suggestion that Chris Kaba had firearms, and it was found that he didn't have firearms, which is really, really significant and speaks to this, technological AI side of policing where it's intelligence driven and not driven by actual police work in terms of interactions. We know cars get sold, we know people move houses. You can't be rocking up with guns if you don't know who's in that car.
Now, the people at the protest, they know how the media talks about this, so they addressed some of those narratives, including Chris Kaba's cousin.
We don't want no violence, we don't want nothing else kicking off, in the name of Chris.
As well as Labour MP Bel Ribeiro Addy.
The narratives that we heard from the media were that he was a drill artist, that he was a rapper, that he'd been to prison before. Look at him, he's clearly a criminal. All of those really horrible and disgusting things. And almost as if to say, because of any of that, because he was a black man, that he may have deserved what happened to him. No one deserves to die in that way. Nobody deserves to die in that way. Let's be absolutely clear.
Because so many of those narratives want us to pretend that we live in a country that has the death penalty. We do not. And even countries that do have the death penalty, they don't allow police officers to give out summary executions on the street, or at least they're not supposed to.
As Bell said, they try to ridicule his character and say all these things. One thing I want to say about that is, he, without sin, cast the first stone.
And I find that really interesting because the people who push that narrative of, look at his criminal past, therefore he deserved to die. When you look at the sheer level of criminality that goes on at the top level of that side of UK politics, and I don't just mean the 126 crimes committed over the Downing Street parties, I mean the 99% of COVID contracts that were given away without any competition process to make sure those companies could actually do the job, with special access for the mates of the Conservative Party. I mean accepting £12,000 from a Conservative Party donor while helping them avoid paying £45 million to the local council. I mean the vast majority of Tory MPs voting to let an MP off the hook after he was found guilty of bribery. These people are mostly millionaires, and yet they still commit crimes. So imagine putting their level of morality in the shoes of somebody who is throat deep in poverty. Now, I know what some of you are thinking right now, but let's be clear, there is a difference between me sitting here and justifying crime and saying that somebody shouldn't be shot dead for it, which is why the next speaker really spoke to me.
A lot of people want to talk about man was a part of a gang, this, that. It's them that put us in the estates for the poverty. Yeah? It's them that sets it up so we fight against each other. How is man living in Hackney, in poverty, but next door you got Old Street and they're driving Ferraris and they think the man that ain't gonna want to eat food? You think they're not gonna want, when we see our mums struggle day in, day out? Yeah? And then they tell us to follow them in that thing. So what we try to do is we try to eat. We try to come back and provide for our families. Chris Kaba was a father!
Now, I've made that point before, because even the Tory government's beating crime plan says that poverty and a lack of opportunity is a major factor behind crime rates. So they know this. They also know, based on their own race report, that if you've got a black-sounding name, you have to send 70% more job applications to get a call back for employment. So the government is well aware of the vicious circle of racism, poverty, and crime. And I know that too, but I only know it from Google. This man has lived it, which is why I went up and found him after he finished speaking.
I'm Femi, I'm here with
Respect, Rebellion from Forever Family. Basically, they understand sociology. Poverty breeds crime, crime breeds violence, yeah? And a lot of us have to see our parents struggle. Some of us have got parents that have got learning disabilities.
Yeah.
Some of us have got single mums that are struggling to cope. Some of us have got, there's an array of issues on a society level which they don't want to try to solve, so they shut down youth clubs, they take away opportunities. Do you know what I'm saying? And a lot of the brothers feel like the only way we can provide, and I was one of them, was the streets. Genuinely, we don't think we can be a doctor or be a lawyer, you know what I'm saying? And then when we get there, it's a survival.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? And it starts this back and forth that we have, and then they use that back and forth that we're having as children, lost children, and then they're using that now to justify a police officer who's paid and made an oath to protect and serve.
And despite knowing all that, knowing that their own police stats show that black people are stopped and searched by police 7 times more than white people, even though their own stats also show that white people are more likely to have drugs on them when they're stopped and searched, their reaction is to deny that institutional racism exists and pass laws to get the police to discriminate against black people even more, calling it objectively justified. And now another black man is dead. There are ways to make the system better because the core problem is racism in society at large. And you fix that by improving the perception of people from ethnic minorities. So given that we know that there's a lot of discrimination based on the perceived ethnicity of people applying for jobs, if the government either mandated or used tax benefits to encourage the use of anonymous job application processes, then the top jobs in the UK would more accurately reflect the ethnic makeup of the UK, and therefore the perception of people from ethnic minorities would improve. It would also address discrimination on the basis of sex, region, and class. On top of that, we need history education to include the histories of people who aren't white, both here and abroad. But to make these changes, we need a government that cares. This one doesn't. We need a parliament that reflects the people of the UK. This one doesn't. Because under this voting system, the Tories were able to get 56% of the seats in Parliament, even though only 44% actually voted for them. Whereas Labour got 32% of the vote, but only 31% of the seats, which means that mathematically at the last election, Tory votes were worth 30% more than Labour votes. And given that people from ethnic minorities overwhelmingly tend not to vote Tory, that means that mathematically their votes are worth less. Which means that the fight for racial equality and justice depends on Labour and the opposition parties working together to give us a fair voting system. Because right now we have a government that would rather treat blackness as a problem, as Vic Santoro explains.
I want to tell you about the hunter and prey mentality that exists in our communities between the police and young black men. The police put on the uniform and come into this community with no intention to understand. They want to run with a stereotype. So that means that I see 3 male in a tracksuit might be a gang member. I'm a father. I've got a 12-year-old son. I'm scared to let him go to the shop because he's an IC3 male and he likes wearing tracksuits. And I'm worried about what police brutality, what it's going to do to his mental health. The effects of stop and search on young people who are not in that way inclined is so detrimental. It changes their perspective of how they see the world or what they think their futures are gonna be.
IC3 is the police code for black, and the way it's used is a huge part of the problem. So for example, Hugo Boateng, a 13-year-old boy who was on a charity bike ride with his father, was chased by police and nearly tasered, ending up with cuts on his face. Why? Because he matched the description of IC3 on a bike. Black, male, and on a bike was all it took for police officers to chase down a child with electric weapons. Which is why the host Marvina said this.
To my brothers and sisters, your skin is not a weapon. You are not a threat, but you do not fit the description.
And there's a human cost to all this. For example, Chris Kaba's
Fiance, who is in bits. She's supposed to be planning a baby shower. Yeah? Not a funeral, a baby shower. And we tried to bring up her spirit a bit and asked her if she still wanted to go ahead. She said, how? She said, how? How am I supposed to do that? I can barely get out of bed. So I want to go through the demands again. So number 1, did the officers know that it was Chris in the car, or were they simply following a suspect vehicle? Number 2, the suspended officer must be interviewed under caution without delay and keep family informed of this. And finally, number 3, there should be a charging decision within weeks and not months.
We're still waiting for all the facts to come out about the shooting of Chris Kaba, but we do know that there is a problem in British policing. What was your experience with the issue of racism as a police officer?
So when I was in the police force, I experienced racism. I could see racism, and so was trying to challenge it, and by trying to challenge it, I then became the target of racism and misogyny. It was quite severe bullying. It made me suicidal. It made me go off sick from work. Initially it was taken quite seriously, so it was filed as a hate crime, but then, as with many things in the police, nothing happened to the officers involved. They will always view us as inferior. That needs to change. It's not a training issue, it's a cultural issue.
Is that what allows them to take photos of dead girls who have been hit?
They don't see us as equals, they don't see black women as, they dehumanise us, they degrade us. Even, if you think someone's been murdered, that is possibly the most vulnerable vulnerable and heartbreaking state that you can find someone, the amount of care and attention as an officer that you were told to give in that situation. And that yet they show complete disregard for those women's bodies. And that's the kind of thing, this attitudinal. I know for a fact those officers, the fact that they shared it in loads of WhatsApp groups, they were laughing. And this is the kind of thing you would hear as an officer, them going back and laughing about how they humiliated black people and sharing stories as if it's a currency.
And that attitude you mentioned, did that include things like when they strip searched the 15-year-old girl in class?
Absolutely. After Wayne Couzens had been found guilty, at the time of him being sentenced, when the sentence decision was being made, officers from that police force stood in court and asked the judge to show leniency when sentencing him. This is the one they knew was the rapist, this is the one they knew everything that he had done to Sarah Everard, and yet they stood in court to defend him.
Now, I've been on the wrong end of racist policing at least twice in my life, and even I can recognise that I've never been through anything like what the people I met on Saturday have been through. So if even I can recognise the privileges that I have, keep that in mind next time you see the story about the rapper who got shot and you want to say, oh, well, I could never be in that situation. Because
Your silence is consent. You're part of the problem.
have a great week.